Check out this very interesting SG custom that the Music Zoo got from the Gibson custom shop. At first glance, you might think, hey, it's a 68 style batwing guard, only a single humbucker, Nashville style bridge, with an ebony fretboard and mother of pearl block inlays. But due to only having one pickup, it's got the SG Junior layout with just a master volume, master tone, and an output jack on the front. Seeing a batwing guard out of the custom shop is a rare occurrence nowadays. However, there's two additional things that make this one unique. The first one might bite you squarely in the face. There's some sort of a carving on the front of this instrument. It's very subtle and it doesn't stand out, but you've got this flowering leaf design that's then filled in with black, so it just kind of looks like it was inked on, but it has a slight 3D effect to it. But then flipping it over to the back, I found it really funny that they actually routed this just like a SG Junior with the small backplate, but you get the continuation of your kind of brownish walnut finish, but then you might notice something at the back of the neck. They did the exact same thing here with a symmetrical design of some leaves and flowers. As far as our headstock, nothing too crazy going on up here. I would have liked to have seen an engraved truss rod cover. But then the back, it actually says this is from the year 2024, pretty late in production. The 3185th guitar that particular year with the CS style serial. And it's just labeled an SG Custom in its COA booklet. And this has since found a home, but if we can believe the old Google ad here, it was listed for $7,000. Gotta give a shout out to David H. for sending me this listing, otherwise I probably would have missed it. But to be honest, I didn't really like this guitar much. It's cool that Gibson was experimenting, but it just didn't really do it for me in the stock photos. Until David sent me this video of the Music Zoo uncasing it. And this just transforms everything. You can see how the wood shifts its color from dark to light, the black pickguard being super reflective, and it really brings that whole design out of the guitar even more so than the photos were suggesting. So it was seeing it in the flesh, so to speak, that really just made me go, okay, maybe Gibson is onto something here, because this is very 70s influenced. I'm curious if we will see anything more out of the custom shop, because generally speaking, it's Ricky Heinrichsen that does most of Gibson's art carving guitars. We usually see a new round of guitars from him every year, but he does paintings, he does engravings, wood burning on guitars and amps. We've talked about these in the past. Art guitars aren't for everyone, but I reached out to him to see, was he doing this? Because this looks a lot more simplistic than usual. So maybe the custom shop's trying to make a series out of these that are a little bit more scaled back. But he said no, this was somebody else within the custom shop. So I wish I could tell you, will we see more of these, yes or no? But it could be Gibson's training up a few other guys to also do some art guitars, because let's face it, Ricky's one guy. He can only make so many guitars per year. But if you like what you see here, you're gonna love the rest of this episode, because I told you earlier, this is 70s influenced. That's because carved guitars like this, as far as I'm aware anyways, started to get big around that era. So we'll start this journey with something that might have influenced it, the Guild S100 carved. A walnut-colored SG-like thing with some engravings in it. That's my guess of where it came from and why they chose the particular finish styles that they did, but this is an oak leaf. You got little acorns on it with the matching leaves, and then a little bit of a woo down here just to connect it all. The Guild Polaras are actually pretty interesting guitars. We have reviewed a few on the show, but none of the vintage ones. So if you love what you saw on that custom shop SG but can't necessarily afford it, this is like a third of the price, and it's got a lot more vintage to it if you're into that. Although you don't get any fancy neck heel carvings or anything like that. But you do get a belly cut. There's another one for sale for about $3,000 by Thunder Road Guitars. It doesn't appear to have aged as much or have as heavy of a finish to it. Or maybe it's just the blinding white background, but it kind of helps you see the oak leaf design a little bit more. No, I think that's just a lighter colored mahogany body than the last one we were looking at, because you can tell the neck is a lot darker from this photo. So there will be some variances there. But that little swoop line on that reminded me of the Epiphone Scrolls. Do you technically consider this one a carved guitar? German carve, maybe. So not exactly artsy, but I do love the Epiphone Scrolls. I would love to review one of these. A very interesting raised top portion there. And of course the iconic scroll design right here. Which, okay, I suppose kind of falls into the art category. But if memory serves, this is one of those Japanese-made Epiphones of the late 70s. And they made them out of different woods. This one just happens to be maple. Looking at the used market, seems like $1,000 to $2,000 will get you one depending on how high end of the version that you want. But if the Polara wasn't fancy enough for you, check out some of these Electras you can find. CME called this model the 2258. And even though we don't have any fancy acorns, you've got a whole bunch of something else around it. It just really brings this whole design out, and then they have a little bit of vinage going. Mix that with that kind of dirty natural top with a little bit of chatoyancy and some speckly mineral streaks just to complement everything else. I've always found these quite fascinating because not only do you get the relief carving of the leaves, but you get a fancy fretboard too. On top of that, it's maple. But that's the whole tree of life thing, and then as you continue on up, then you get a fancy headstock too, which reads Electra, apparently an abalone, and then you get this interesting chalice with, I would assume that's another flower, but just kind of looks like a flaming pot. And man, is that a double layer of binding? Cool. That's another model I really would not mind documenting one day. Despite actually being one of the bolt-on Electras, it also appears to be maple construction, at least triple pieces of maple on the neck, and this particular one had some flame figuring in it. But remember, every single one will be a little bit different. Here's one with a slightly brighter body with not as much mineral streaks. And you know what? That's interesting. You see a outline around the design. From the little bit that I do know about woodworking, that might just be the light catching it as it carves down this direction. That way they have enough wood to make the relief leaves out of. But this one, it looks like somebody threw some mini humbuckers in it. But huzzah! I tricked you! It's a Kasuga! Rather than an Electra. Sometimes many different brands would do different things, but hey, this one's a set neck. Although I would argue Electra is a more notable brand. I've never heard of this particular one. That's still made in Japan. And we get a slightly better look at our abalone leaves and the vines. Wouldn't even surprise me if the same factory made both of those. But back to Electras now. They also had an SG Tree of Life. Exact same patterns that we saw before, and now that I know to look for it, yeah, sure enough, you see that kind of outline around the whole design. But this one has a bit of a different staining job to it. If I had to guess, that's the natural mahogany wooden color, and they just covered over that and then sprayed the darker walnut finish on it. And that's a really dark fretboard. That's aged a lot over the years. Your nut matches in color. Headstock's got a whole lot of purple in it. And it looks like somebody might have even took the time to make a wooden backplate cover for this particular one, but it's also a bolt-on neck. And oh, sweet, yeah, we can totally see everything that we were just talking about with this up-close photo. That one sold 5 years ago for a little under $1,000. As of right now, I don't see any currently available. But they are out there, and hey, look at this, I actually found one of the original advertisings. That's an interesting sticker design. Tree with a power cord coming out of it. But another one I ran into is a Univox eagle. I personally had not seen one of these prior to today, but sure enough, they threw an eagle on there. They're probably thinking, hey, these American patriots, they would love to have an eagle on a guitar. And then let's slap 3 humbuckers in it just for extra fun. Nice play, Univox. It is cool. But just look at how detailed this particular one is. You got the eagle's head right here, really sharp beak, but its wingspan just takes over the entire guitar. But once again, dark walnut just seems to be the go-to choice to finish these things in, because then you don't have to add coloring. Because coloring can be make it or break it to these carved guitars. Sometimes it looks great, other times not so good. Many times it's best just to let the wood do the talking. Especially because of things like we saw on the first SG. The natural chatoyance of the wood can bring something else out of it. Oh, and if you're a bass player and you'd want something like this, they also did a slightly modified design to it, where the eagle's head's pointing up more. And even though I think the wing is just a little bit way too crazily long on that design, I think I like the eagle's head better on that one. But now looking at this other one, it almost appears they were all maybe a little bit different. I don't know the full history of this model. His head's like really out there, kind of like a snake. Doesn't look too bad in that photo, but then in this photo, you definitely notice it. Now, would it be comfortable playing that? I mean, your arm's going to rest right here. You're going to feel it, but I don't think it'd be uncomfortable. It would just take a second to get used to. Somebody didn't have any issues on this particular. But here's a good photo of its headstock. You can see the Univox was also engraved, which is fantastic. And you get some leaves out of the headstock too, just for some extra fun. So when you think about those guitars that we just looked at for the 70s and some of the early 80s, that's when you can look at modern day creations to see where maybe they got some of those influences from. For example, here's the PRS Snarling Tiger, where now we can mix modern day super crazy flamey tops with it and the coloring, and other exotic woods on the back. Like, that's super flamey along the edges, really nicely made wooden back plates, crazy figured neck, just absolutely insane everywhere. And you get a mother of pearl eagle up here with a matching truss rod cover and tuner tips. This one was made up in the year 2020. And then you've got your little snarling tiger friend here who looks a little bit cartoony, but you might say that one got some of its influence from the late 90s Snake Pit Les Paul. Now say whatever you want about the snake, but this is the model that made me fall in love with the relief carvings in general. It's just such a perfect spot on a guitar to put something like that. And it's also the model that made me fall in love with really nice, fancy, intricate inlay work. The cobra on the fretboard has to be my favorite thing about this guitar, but the relief carving is what makes the Snake Pit the most unique, because there's other crazy inlay guitars within Gibson's literature, but you don't see too many carved ones. Alright, Troglodytes, I hope you enjoyed our carved guitar journey. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll catch you tomorrow on the next one. Take care.